Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this next installment of Joseph Young and Friends. It's a series that we're inviting all of you, our audience, to engage with the orchestra in a virtual setting. We're going to share these musical experiences, chat with BSO musicians, local composers, and special guests. Tonight, we have a very special guest. This is also an opportunity for us to engage all of you who have been so loyal to the Berkeley Symphony, but also meet some new members. Webinar is such a difficult way to engage with everyone, but again, stick around after the broadcast and we'll have a Q&A. And it's an opportunity we invite all of you to what I call the virtual stage to have conversations with the artists. We have three unique programs that I'm hosting with amazing guests. But I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you can join me for our other programs. Now, today, Joseph Young and Friends presents a guest that kind of needs no introduction. He's appeared internationally as a pianist and a composer. He's received numerous accolades, including the Avery Fisher Career Grant. He's been with the Berkeley Symphony numerous times. I was so happy that he joined us for my opening night. And I think the Berkeley Symphony, we all consider him a friend. So please welcome our guest tonight, Conrad Tao. Conrad,
Hi, hello. I'm
great to see you.
good to see
You
you
know,
too.
I want to make sure, with before all of these, I want to make sure I always ask, how are you doing these days? And where are you?
I am coming to everyone from New York, so across the country, three hours in the future, and I'm in my home. I'm just in my home here in Uptown Manhattan, and I'm doing okay actually. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of music making happen in the last few weeks with some friends here in New York, but also like as has been the case for the last few months, also just from here in my home. And I'm just really grateful to still be able to make lots of music. So I'm
I
very
don't think everyone realizes what we're going to experience today, so I'm just going to make sure I say this at the beginning. We've had episodes where we've had these tapes of players, videotape them, and we kind of broadcast it later. You're actually going to play live for us, which is so great. And it this environment of solitude that we're in has this kind of influence your music making. I mean, the environment has to influence who you are, but this is totally different. And has this inspired you in many ways?
I think that, well, I definitely, yes, first of all. I mean, the most pronounced thing for me was how quickly it became apparent that improvisation was going to become the thing in my musical toolkit that was like really essential for this, unprecedented year.
Yeah.
And and improvisation became this particular muscle of music making that I really held on to because it was a method of music making that really forced me to be in the moment and be accountable to the moment. And especially early on in the pandemic, in like March, April, May, um, it was difficult to feel like you had a handle on time. And I think that's still difficult, but I think this, the shock of it in the first couple months was so extreme. And so improvisation and doing a lot of it really deeply became this way for me to still feel really connected to the time that I was in and the space that I was in. So
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
biggest change.
Improvisation is like something that I think people forget that, the great composers were kind of fluent in improv. And sometimes we forget, I think sometimes audiences and even, you know, cultured musicians forget that improv is such a should be an important part of an artist, and you kind of embrace that as being this amazing composer, amazing pianist, but improv's part of your musical life. And how did you find that was going to be something that really took takes you to express yourself?
Well, I am kind of shocked that it is. I mean, I'm shocked that it is in a way that I've started to feel able to show people more. It's been a part of my private music making for most of my life. It was always a huge part of how I grew as a musician and how I experimented with like what it meant to write music. But as an actual practice of music making with friends and with colleagues and like a real area of serious musical study, that's fairly new. That's like, well, the last few years or so. And it's really come out of just the generosity and happenstance of connecting with some musicians who work in that tradition, like all the time, who really devote their entire musical lives to that tradition. I'm thinking of people like Taishan Sori, the brilliant musician. I mean, no label really fits, but the brilliant drummer, composer, improviser, Taishan Sori. We played a program of solo piano music with like Schoenberg and Feldman and Boulez, and we improvised between pieces, and he just played the whole time, and it blew my brain open. And I remember walking off stage in that concert. That was in 2016, and I walked off stage. We did 2 sets that night. I remember walking off stage after the first set and thinking like, I had no idea that you could do that. Like I had no idea that you could actually share that with people in that way.
Right.
And so I'm just very grateful that I met people like that. And then I met also in 2016, my friend Charmaine Lee, who's a brilliant vocalist, improviser. I mean, again, those labels really aren't enough, but she also really has devoted her musical life to the improvised tradition. And I'm just really grateful that I've been able to have deep musical experiences and friendships with people who do this all the time.
Yeah.
And so and you know, it's as simple as that, really, just being around people for whom this is like the epitome of like their honest expression. It's a lot easier to see how that's the case when you're, you know, being guided by wonderful people. So
Yeah.
I think for me, it was always latent, but it took some other people to reach out to me in some ways for me to recognize that, oh, I can actually also bring it a little more to the surface in some ways.
And so, and I know you've done a lot in this virtual age, and has that kind of also structured, you know, and brought that immediacy and that more excitement to the idea of improving um, over Zoom?
Well, I think that what it's done is I'm kind of I am, as much as I miss playing for real audiences in like sharing the same space with people, I have grown to appreciate the strange intimacy of this setup. Like and 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 for example, like we've got like everyone here. I don't know where you are. I don't know like what you're listening on. I don't know if you're on a computer or maybe you're using a tablet or a phone even. I have no idea. And I don't know what room you're in. So like it has been really hard to let go of like that control, because as you know, we're classical musicians, we make
Yeah.
acoustic music, so that's like the number one thing that you're banking on, is that we're all listening to the same air. And so not having that anymore has been really interesting, and has been like and I think has encouraged me to share like the work I do with electronics, and just in general there's a different kind of closeness. I think in some ways it's an intimacy that you can't get by
Yeah.
being in like the more ritualistic space of a concert hall. This is more like you are coming in, we are in each other's like chosen spaces, you know? So I think that
And
I've embraced that.
and I think it's going to make that when we do come together even sweeter because, you know, we as classical musicians, we have some control over what we do if we try to. And you know, I'm a conductor. I can't. Sometimes, you know, I try too hard, but also the audience has some control factors. You know, this is their assigned seat. They can't bring drinks into, you know. So now we have everyone has their a little more liberty to create their own control spaces. And I just think that, you know, even though that we are so separated right now that us coming together is going to make it so much sweeter when we're actually in those controlled environments again. Um, you know, you're you're going to be playing a few things live, and one of the things Conrad told me was that I'll tell you the day of, which is great. I love it, because it keeps that kind of immediacy of what's going to happen in this program. And so, can you tell us a little bit about because I think the first piece you actually are segueing into something you wrote, or it might be the other way around.
The other way around, but yes, yeah. So I'm going to start with a short piece that I wrote in 2017 called All I Had Forgotten or Tried To. And I wrote this piece in 2017 when a summer festival asked me to play a piece of mine as an encore, if I wouldn't mind doing that. And I didn't have any convenient three-minute sized pieces lying around, so I wrote one. And so that is what brings it into being. It gets its title from a beautiful short story by the late author Kevin Killian, who was Bay Area based, in fact. Oh. San Francisco based author Kevin Killian, who was part of the new narrative avant-garde that grew in the Bay Area in around I want to say the 80s. And then I'm going to segue into some music by a little known composer named Johann Sebastian Bach. I'm going to be playing his Chromatic Fantasy and Fugue, which is definitely a classic in my mind. Yes. So a piece of mine, All I Had Forgotten or Tried To, and then the Chromatic Fantasy and Fugue by Johann Sebastian Bach. Yes.
Can you tell us about the cameras?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I can turn it on. So just you wait. Behold, I have a multi-cam setup in my home. I am joining you via my phone. So.
That's amazing. So we're excited to hear it. So.
Hey. Oh, Joseph, I can't hear you.
You know, it's the whole thing with Zoom. You make sure you're not on mute.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph.
You know, it's for some of our audience members. As I was listening, this is maybe the first time. You know, we've heard some music again taped, but live in your living room. But you know, it just feels so great to watch this experience live. So thank you for that. Um, you know, when I was listening to you, I mean, I don't think I asked why, what, how did you pick that Bach for the I guess I don't know what Genesis came first, your piece connected to the Bach or the Bach?
I I mean, I wish I had like a more deeply considered answer. I mean, it's more like there are these little constellations of pieces that start to emerge just usually out of practicing,
Mm,
and it tends to come from like a subconscious place. I think for me, what I like about this pairing is that um, first of all, my little piece that starts is essentially a single line, and I guess in some ways it's a little more, it's homophony, and
mm,
so it's like it sounds like really early music maybe in some ways the way that it functions, um, and so I think there's just like, I mean, I always have this desire to juxtapose in such a way that maybe you maybe hear the work that is centuries old, and also that we may have grown up hearing recordings of, say, but that you
yeah,
can hear it with somewhat with newly awakened ears. And so I think in my piece, because I work inside the piano a little bit and I open up the timbral world of the instrument, that then maybe some of that timbral complexity and richness may be heard in the Bach, because because Bach's music is so harmonically oriented, and I really believe in like harmony, melody, timbre all being kind of uh, different like sides of the same prism.
yeah,
But also like it's just like it frees my own musical mind up. I think my piece is has an explosive moment of freedom. I always tend to improvise in the same moment of my piece, and that improvisatory spirit runs throughout the Bach as well.
wow,
And
yeah,
I think like coming into it with some of that energy just helps
yeah.
me as a player.
And it does. I mean, it feels like I teach kids, and um, when they tackle Bach, there's this restriction because you know it's Bach, it's academic, but there's so much creativity and so much. Um, there isn't that much restriction in the idea of Bach's music, and if you are able to open yourself up to that, I mean, it like you said, it naturally happens
Right. The
from the
harmony is
improv to
there,
your
you know?
Bach. Yeah, it's just so great. I'm sure everyone's going to ask questions about those extended techniques that you used in but we'll wait for the chat, the
Okay.
Q&A for that. Can you tell me again that author from the Bay Area that you were talking about?
Yes, Kevin Killian is his name, and I will actually write this in the chat for everyone to see. Um, and it comes, the title, All I Had Forgotten or Tried to, comes from his book, Impossible Princess,
Mm, okay.
which, uh, which was published, I think, in like 2013, but it gets its title, it's a collection of short stories and poetry, and it gets its title from the Kylie Minogue album of the same name,
Okay.
like 1999. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. And I asked that because how many times have you been with Berkeley? I was happy to have you for my first concert, but you've been with the orchestra how many times?
I want to say when I worked with you, was it at this point last year? But when we worked together, I think it was I want to say third time.
Okay. Was it this point? This is October. You are correct.
I know,
It's
right?
been a year. Wow. And but we consider like even after that my first time with you, we were considering when we're going to bring you back. Not only playing, but also I know I've discovering your music and wanting to create with you. But you kind of love Berkeley. I You kind of love the Bay Area.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's such a great place to be. I love the Bay Area, but also, like, I remember the first time I went to Berkeley, and this was probably for like a recital, like maybe 12 years ago, I think was my first time out there. And I just remember, like, I think it was Top Dog that like initially won me over.
Okay.
I think that was the spot. But then also like Cheeseboard Collective
Okay.
is like, I don't know. I mean, Berkeley has a lot to offer. Berkeley. I was almost swore. Berkeley is a really freaking cool place. So I love going out there. The
Both the cheese board. I've not been to the cheese board yet, so I envy you for being
I
able
hope
to
they're.
come.
I mean, I hope that they're staying open through all of this.
I'm hoping. We're really hoping that the community's coming together with really banding together. From what I hear, it's a place that really helps each other out, and it's great to hear the great news that's coming out of there, out of Berkeley. But so your next piece has that Berkeley connection. So I didn't know about the Bay Area connection for the first piece, and I'm so happy to hear. But your next piece has that Berkeley connection too. Can you talk about that one?
Yeah, so I'm gonna play now another set of things. I'm gonna end with China Gates by John Adams, and I associate John Adams with the Bay Area in general, and so and this piece China Gates was written for Sarah Cahill, who is a pianist also based in the general Bay Area as well. So it just feels very right. And before I do that, though, before we launch into that piece, I'm going to drop some magnets in the piano. There are these little disc-shaped magnets, and I'm going to drop them inside the instrument, and I'm going to improvise with the results. And this is a pandemic era repertoire addition to my repertoire. Because I love these magnets. When they fall in, they produce a really beautiful sound. They open up this beautiful sound world for the instrument, but I don't know where they're going to fall, so I don't know what I'm going to hear, and so I have to listen. And then I have to make music, and so we're going to do that. We're going to drop these in, we're going to play, and then eventually we'll find our way to China Gates by John Adams.
That's amazing. Bravo. You know, how does it feel like, sorry, how does it feel with, you've, I mean, amazing performance, but it's just rings out and you're all alone. One of those things that, we have that audience and we know that that you have a virtual claps applause going right now, but how does that feel? For me as a conductor, I have a different story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have been lucky enough to do one outdoor show with some people actually present. And it was it was a definite shock to my system to actually hear applause
Yeah.
again, to be in that context again. I mean, I miss it so much. It's like it's it's just different,
Yeah.
which is, I think, why, like, when we spoke earlier this week, I think I joked to you that, like, at this point I feel like I have a pandemic repertoire, like a specific pandemic home music making kind of repertoire. And I think it's because, like, I am trying to find ways of sharing music making and sharing this real, like, this is live in the sense that we're sharing this time together.
Yeah.
And it became like a kind of a fun challenge to think, like, what kinds of music making can I do that will communicate something across this format. And also, a way that I thought about it was, what can I do in this context that is unique? So, like, for example, I hope that there aren't any audio engineers in the house, because I don't think this is how you're supposed to mic a piano, per se. But what I'm trying to do is, I figure, like, we're in my space anyway. I want to bring you into my ears in, like,
Yeah.
a slightly more literal way than is ever possible in an actual concert hall space, right? Because, like, that's one
Yeah.
of the funky paradoxes of being a live musician, is, like, everyone's hearing a different thing. And here, I know that on some level, although I don't know where people are listening or what they're listening on, I know that they're getting a signal from me. And there's lots of things I can't control. I can't control the stability of my internet connection. I can't control all these other things that maybe the program is doing on my behalf, but I can put thought into, like, the audio signal that I'm sending out. And so there is a lot of thought, not necessarily on the technical level, but on the musical level, like, what do I want to try to do? Like the magnet stuff, I think that actually some of that sound would actually get lost
Yeah.
in a larger hall. And so in some ways I wanted to, it's been more like thinking about, what can I do uniquely in this.
And it was so interesting, the magnets, and it felt those felt like gamelan rings, but I mean, and like you said, if you put the microphone maybe in there, it might have been too much.
Right.
It just gave those intimate experiences, and again, like you would have heard, like you're experiencing yourself. So it's truly bringing us into your home for a live experience. So that's great. Um, you know, we want to end the program with actually a excerpt from our concert with the Ravel Piano Concerto, and this is kind of a staple for you. This piece.
I
Um,
hope so. I like it enough that I hope so. Yeah.
And to me, it's just such a quirky, witty piece. For Ravel, it's one of his last pieces. But for you as a player, do you find? I mean, I feel like I know the answer, but I'm just gonna say, do you find that joy in playing, this piece in particular?
500%. I mean, the Ravel G major concerto is like, that is a deep relationship for me at this point. That, like, I think the first time I ever heard it was with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, when like 2000 or 2001, with Mitsuko Uchida performing it, and it blew my mind. Especially, like, the first movement was actually the thing that blew my mind. That opening whip crack, and I was obsessed with, like, the uh, like, just the
Yeah.
sort of craggy dissonance of it. The fact, I think it was new to me. Like, I was 6 or 7 years old, and so I was like, oh, I had no idea. It sounded so, like, new and surprising to me. And I also have a really formative memory of practicing the second movement as a teenager when I was a music student at the Aspen Music Festival and having the windows open, and it was like late at night and it was all dark and I was the only person there, and it was just me and the creek and the like avian and insect hum around me. And it was like a really pivotal experience of learning to listen to music as like the totality of the space, like hearing the natural world as in that moment like an active participant in the music making.
Yeah.
So this piece is always tied to that for me. And then the actual pleasure of getting to play it with lots of different orchestras and conductors, and it's like this piece has been around in my head and in my life for like almost 20 years now, and I'm so grateful that I get to keep doing it.
Yeah. So I think we're going to hear, for me, it almost feels like a game of hide and seek between the piano and the orchestra, and this last movement with, you know, witty sounds from the E flat clarinet to the trombones to the trumpet. But you know, it's such a joyful piece. And so I'm glad we're going to end with this one. Conrad, thank you so much for joining me and having this little chat and giving us great music. You know, even for me, being in my own space, hearing someone play for me live is blowing my mind. So thank you
Well,
so
it's
much.
such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure on my end. So thank you all, and thank you everyone for being here wherever you are. Yeah.
And everyone, please join us for a communal get together after Ravel. I've asked Conrad many questions tonight, and please join us, and we'll invite everyone into the Zoom room, and you, of course, can interact with each other and our guest Conrad. So thank you all, and here is the last movement from Ravel's Piano Concerto.